Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this small nuclear modular reactor of mining podcasts. That's right, we're talking uranium on Boom Bust and BS.
Today we have a fantastic guest. It's not often that we get to talk with someone who has been responsible, along with his team, for multiple uranium discoveries in the Athabasca, spanning decades. In light of what's happened in the last 48 hours here, we had a uranium deal where Sprott raised 100 million, or went out to raise 100. They've raised 200. Clearly big excitement. We've got the nuclear tape, as it were, globally is becoming more interesting. We've got the greenies wanting wanting uranium now. We've got the left, we've got the right. So it's kind of this renaissance for nuclear and uranium. And there's not a lot of guys that we could have out here that could tell us how they found it, where they found it, and where they're gonna find it. So Dev Randhawa, excited to have you on today. Appreciate your time. And let tell us a little bit about your history and your history of discovery in the basin.
Well, thank you for having me on. Also, like I think I love what you guys are doing, and well, there's palladium and different things you guys write about. They're on the money, and so thanks for having me on. Well, for me, um, it's really been a question of talking to people and bringing people on. So when I first, this was going to sound crazy, but in 1995, some guy, my friend Rich Newberry, phones me up and says, "I met these two old guys in the elevator, and they're looking for a shell for uranium." And I'm not kidding you. I'm embarrassed to tell you that I said, "Well, don't we have enough bombs?" That's how ignorant I was of the industry. And really, Anthony, that's what it was like from 96 till um for almost 10 years, I would say. I was always educating people that, we were producing, our demand keeps going higher and we keep producing less and less. And so that's how much little I knew. But there was a guy named Rick Rule that I met. And he really pushed me because he was a fan. Him and Lucas Lund, our late Lucas Lundin friend, he has just started ICU, International Uranium. If you remember, IUC, that's what it was, which then merged with Denison. Um, so when you don't have, remember the old saying, you don't need to be the smartest guy in the room, but know who the guy is and hang out with him. And so Lucas and Rick said, "This is the right direction." So it was really hard sledging for a long time. And then we had, the fire at Ranger, and then the flood at Cigar. That's what ignited the whole industry. And again, some guy calls me up and says, "I want you to meet somebody who owns about 5% of your stock." And I walk in the room, and it's Eric Sprott. And it was a bit disarming. He says, "I don't think you know what you're doing. But I like the fact you want to buy everything, so we'll back you." And that's the point. And I said, "What do you think I know what I'm doing?" He goes, "What do you think uranium's going to do?" And I said, "I think it's going to go to 40." He goes, "No, it's going over 100." And then I realized, then, again, he's smarter than me. Listen to the guy. So, we were able to build this company called Strathmore from 1.8 million all the way up to half a billion. And but as you remember, the financial crisis, everything happened. Eventually, prior to that, though, funny we talk about Sput. Sput was a brainchild of Peter Grosskopf. He took it from Denison and brought it in-house to Sprott, made it very aggressive. I believe that's the single most important thing that's happened in the uranium industry in terms of the spot price. Um, and so Peter at the time, back in 2006 and 7, was the head of Cormar Securities or Sprott Securities, and said, "Let's spin out." And he's the one that said, "Look, you're going to get zero credit for exploration. So let's start a new company called Fission Energy," which we did. And And obviously, Fission Energy went on to, produce over $1.5 billion worth of market cap, whereas the U.S. Was, they went in the tank and they had to sell to Energy Fuels, which some of those projects are still around. So we were able to, we go that far back, and then so Fission Energy became F1. We made a discovery with the help of the Korean KEPCO utility. We made a discovery next to Hathor. We sold that to Lucas. We took the west side of the basin, what was left, which nobody believed in. And that's the key thing. Nobody believed there was any uranium on the west side. Two, that there was no uranium except at the unconformity. And thirdly, all uranium had to be inside the basin. Well, Arrow and Triple R are not in the basin.
So
They are
let
not.
me hold you there just for
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
viewers. So Dev is talking about the Athabasca Basin, which is arguably the most important basin in the world outside of Kazakhstan because it sits in Canada. And correct me if I'm wrong, Dev, but all major Canadian uranium deposits, companies, and plays are sitting in the Athabasca Basin. Is that right?
All of them. All of them. Because the grades are the reason the Athabasca grades are over 2%. Quebec is a bandit. BC's bandit. They might change now, but and even if they do, their grades are zero point 0.1. They're more like Namibia and places like that.
So one of the interesting things that you've done, and I'd like you to walk us through it, is you had the Athabasca Basin, and everyone said, "Oh no, the uranium only is hosted here on this side of it or in this part." And what you and your team have done successfully now, I think maybe 4 different times. I don't. You'll have to correct me how many discoveries you have, 4 or 5. What you've done is you've gone and you've used technology, and you've kind of always been on the forefront of that technology, whether it was chasing boulders or now I think you're using drones to go out and test these theories. So walk us through like what was a boulder discovery? What does that mean? Think about, a lot of the people watching they're just
Sure. So yeah,
plumbers and
sorry, forgive me for
miners.
that. Well, the Athabasca is just middle of Canada. In fact, if you drew a map of Canada, it's right there, and it's a basin. Um, the Athabasca Basin is very unique. Um, and what they have is most of the uranium, like Cigar Lake, MacArthur, is found what they call the unconformity, just a fancy word for where this milkshake sandstone hits rock, right? Where the two meet, the contact point is called the unconformity. That's all it is, just a name for it. But the way it's done is that as the uranium comes up and almost percolates, it gets higher grade through the solution system. So everything up to that point.
So it kind
But
of
our
is it fair to say that as it comes up, this unconformity kind of captures the uranium for just
basically,
some
yeah,
and
they're
then
almost like
it focuses it in this layer. Is that a fair way to think about it?
exactly, and that's
Okay.
where it collects. It will collect in that. It will have almost like a mushroom. If you look at a lot of deposits, they're like they pop up there, and they are like they're, and then they are literally like we've talked about pearls on a necklace, right? And etc. So everybody thought all uranium was always going to be in the east, right? Cigar Lake, MacArthur. That's where they're going to be, and you have to be at this unconformity, and you have to be inside this magical line, right? Well, Ray and Ross had come from the diamond industry, and what they used to do in the diamond industry was take choppers and put sensors underneath to sense garnets. If they found the garnets, they knew that there was kimberlite nearby. Then they would go that way. What we did the opposite. We said, what's the best indicator for uranium? Other uranium. So whether there's outcrops of uranium that were popping up, or would we find boulders somewhere? Sure enough, um, fellow name is Kai from Calgary. He had a small plane. He went treetops, which is dangerous, but he did. And then we found the boulders on this side of the road, which eventually led. We hired a glacier geologist, followed it up, and made the discovery on Triple R. And of course, a year later, Lee and the boys made a much bigger discovery over there on their land, some land that I think Patricio had, and they all put together at one time. So that thinking, that's what takes different. Why do small guys beat why does David beat Goliath? Smarter. quicker. And so that's what we've done. And so we've made that discovery. So number F1 was Fission Energy. We sold to Denison. F2 was a triple R, which recently sold a Paladin. And then we took some other assets and began a company called F3. And that's what we're talking about today. In F3, we've got a JR zone, which is at some super grade, up to we've had, I think, 4.5 meters of 50% uranium, 50%.
Great.
Um,
By the way,
and
just for the people watching, I mean, 15% uranium. Do you have to wear special clothes or special equipment to deal with
actually,
that?
uranium is very stable. It's only if you started inhaling it. There's actually Eric Sprott that sent me a link once of a guy who went around campuses eating uranium in front of them because it never solves it, because it's when if you were to cut it up and put it through your nose, that's the problem. It's actually very stable form. But yeah, we absolutely, take all the protection. One thing about being in Saskatchewan, it's at 70 years uranium. There are so many rules to follow, protocols, and it makes it just straightforward. But that was the key. So F3's got the JR zone. We need to grow it, obviously. We don't know if we got 15, 20, or 30 million pounds. We're going to do a PEA next year, maybe this year, depending on timing. But then recently, about a month ago, um, we halfway between us and Arrow, we roughly found another discovery called the Brooch. And we found 30 meters of mineralization, some high spikes in there. So it's a brand new area with lots, and it's bigger than the JR zone already. So, but we've got to get some assays and numbers from there. So F3, we've got over $20 million in the bank. We're well funded. We're owned 7% by Denison Mines. Um, and we've also, Sprott owns about 7% of us through the funds, but also Rick is on his own now. As you know, Rick Rule, they own Chunk. Um, so it's well funded, and we've got a very good technical team. And discoveries matter. Anthony, if you look at stocks that make the biggest runs, it's discoveries, right?
And sorry,
Um,
Dev, if I might, just at that point, you're almost making it sound quite easy finding these things. You've made so
yeah,
many
well,
discoveries,
Yeah, but
but it
I
really
think
isn't,
actually it's
is
worth
it?
noting your team, Dev. I mean, like, just to take a minute here.
yeah,
Most people don't find anything, actually. Most
yeah,
people raise money, they go out, they drill, they shoot whatever they're gonna do,
yeah,
and they don't find anything at all. And I would say one of the companies you founded even recently was taken over. Fission Uranium
yeah.
was purchased, which I think is huge for investors. And so it really is worth noting that you're making it sound like anyone can just roll up to the basin, but actually, one of the things you've done is had a huge amount of success uh, in using these geological techniques, these techniques, as you're saying, looking for boulders, which is I think it's pretty unique. I'm not aware of anyone else who's had that much success making discoveries. I think in that same vein, are you taking advantage of new technology? Like, I know you've been using drones. Is that
Yeah,
working
we
for you?
We haven't found anything yet that way. The idea of using AI was to go through old data
Uh,
and see if something's been missed. You saw that LinkedIn crazy gold deal in Spain that someone had dropped and found out through LinkedIn. Just somebody had forgot about it. Um, and you've obviously Bezos and those guys, rediscovered deposits that people have forgotten about. Athabasca's two problems in Athabasca. One, it's so heavily staked, it's insane. Number two, information is very poor. That's been our struggle. Is if the drill hole information they tell you is not where they actually put the hole in, you're you're chasing the wind.
you
So
mean
that's been our problem.
there would be like a coordinate for a hole and you guys would show up there and it might not be there?
Exactly. And so that's been the problem with, so I don't know if people did that on purpose, Anthony. I know that in the US, see, in Canada, when you do the work, you have to register it. right,
Okay.
with the government. And so if you want this land, you can go back and see, because it's all the work that's been done on it. You assume that's accurate. In the US, they will purposely break up all the core. So you have to restart again, right? It's very rare that the odd company, Carnegie did it from time to time, kept the data and then gave it to university, and et cetera. We have that in one of our companies, Strathmore, where we found Carnegie's old information and the land was unstaked and we grabbed it. But that's rare. But in Canada, we were hoping that information would be a tiny more accurate, because if you're in Namibia, whether you're 15 meters off, it just doesn't matter, because everything's on the surface. It's low grade near the surface. The problem with the Athabasca is you can literally be 5 meters off, 15, 20 feet away from there and have no idea it's here, because it's very potty, and it's not widely disseminated. So that's why data in the Saskatchewan is so crucial. Maybe we're better to apply that data to Namibia. I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Well, what are your future plans here? I mean, the company has obviously had a great run here. You keep producing these great results. I mean, what do you think it looks like here over the next year or two, especially with a pretty positive uranium market?
Oh yeah, I mean, and exactly. So we've got the JR zone. We're continue to. Money is still scarce. We're not gonna. So we're still trying to figure out where the end of that tail is. That will continue with JR, but also here. But the one we're more excited about is Broach, because we think it was land we got for free. We swapped it with somebody, and there's a huge mud layer, which is making it hard to detect the conductor. So we're learning about it as we go. There should be some news out shortly on what we're learning. So our focus is the Broach, definitely. But here's a funny thing, though. Anthony, you've hit it. We can do all the right things, but if the overall market is not on our side, it doesn't matter. The day Christmas, before this Christmas year, we put out that results, 4.5 meters, 50%. Our stock went down 5%. Because when you're in a bad market, people see an opportunity to sell, not buy. So this news by Sput had more impact on us than a drill hole, which is sad, but
Which is
that's the state
crazy,
of the
isn't it?
market. Yeah. But it's true though, because the unfortunately, you know it better than most. You've been following, you've been a part of the investing in the field. That spot price, people are fixated on it. People are completely fixated on it. They'll see announcement of Meta with Constellation. You'll see Microsoft, 3 Mile Island, and they'll go like just a light little clap. They don't see like they say in the prairie, you see the storm coming. Well, the storm's coming. I think it was Rachel from Chemical that said between now and 2035 or 40, there's 3.5 billion pounds uncontracted. Can you believe that? We're only talking in the next 10, 15 years.
Can you give
Billions
us
of
some
pounds.
context to that, Dev? I mean, you've seen so many of these milestones. What does that number actually mean?
Well, the market's only 200 million, right? We need about 200 million roughly, maybe 190. Because our industry is a bit opaque, and we're producing 140 to 150. That's it. Every year we've got a deficit, and it comes through different sources. There are, Olympic Dam doesn't not a uranium mine, but they have a side product and it pumps into it. But we have a deficit. So think about it. You've got there's two prices, spot price and long term. The one that matters the most is long term, because that's where utilities contract at. But what impacts the spot price is not financial players like Sprott. They're the ones in there buying it up. That has huge impact because they clean up this uranium that keeps dropping into it. So it's very important. So you only have a 200 million now. You got billions of pounds uncontracted. And the other one that people maybe didn't catch was the Chinese finally have an SMR going. To me, that was a great piece that was announced last week, I think. They're going to have one SMR, small little reactor, is going to provide electricity for 500,000 homes. Okay. Now that's a little worrisome for me as a North American. What happens if they win the race to the SMRs? They could also win the race to AI, because
And just
only
to pause you there for everyone watching, an SMR is a small modular reactor. And correct me if I'm wrong, Deb. What I think that means is that it's much faster, the permitting, and they're building it in a single place, and then they move it to wherever
Exactly.
to be. And so,
Eh, Yeah.
and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it means that it takes years and years
Yeah.
off of you order one and then it's there in half the time or whatever.
Yeah,
Is that right?
it's yeah, exactly, and it's modular. So if it's working, they can build another one to add on to it. So it can actually, and it's big for people like in the North Sea who are using diesel. Well, if they had one, all the heavy oil out of Alberta, one reactor, they wouldn't have to use any more diesel, right? And so the Chinese are producing the first functioning SMR, small modular reactor. Companies like Facebook, Meta saying, "Uh-oh, if we're going to be part of this race, what's the big roadblock? Power, computing power. We already have it. We already got pressure from electric vehicles, cryptocurrencies, heavy computer power. Now you've got, AI sucking it. So we need a lot of energy." And the reality is, people are waking up. You and I have always, and the industry's always known that renewables won't work because they're not base load. I mean, you can't crank them up and down. You can't tell the sun to shine in the evening. You can't tell the wind when it doesn't want to blow. We can't, and we use our power typically from 5 o'clock at night until 8 o'clock at night. So we need base load power that's clean. There's only one, nuclear, and people are realizing it now. So you're seeing even Germany switching over. What a disaster! They're the they're the California of Europe, right? Stupidity when it comes to power. But even California has realized, we can't have brownouts. And those who work in South Africa know all about brownouts. There's just no power, and people need it. So I think it's a perfect storm for uranium, and for investors. Yeah, they should own some chemical, maybe a developer like NextGen, but they need to have in your portfolio some exploration stocks because we can double and triple. Cameco will go up 10, 20%, but it's not going to triple over a discovery. And that's why these junior stocks like us, and you want to bet on people. In real estate, it's always going to be location, location. When it comes to junior stocks, it's all about management. They can attract capital. They can assess this is a good property or not. And that's how you invest when it comes to junior companies.
I think that's actually a great place to end here and a great, well said. Uh, it's all about the people. And, Dev and his team have had success across decades, including multiple discoveries, multiple companies Dev has sold. And, they're on to something in the Athabasca in this new company. So, Dev, I really appreciate you coming on today. It was fantastic to have you. And let's do it again in a couple months and get an update.
Yeah, hopefully we get some good news coming out of our drilling to confirm this is a discovery. So we're excited for the next couple of weeks.
Great. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, cheers.
Thank you.